A storm is building over Dutton Ranch, and this time it feels different. Not like the usual fights or small conflicts the ranch has survived before, but something much deeper. Something that could break everything apart from the inside. Episode 6 is not just another chapter in the story. It feels like the moment where every hidden secret, every silent betrayal, and every buried truth finally starts to rise to the surface. And once that happens, nothing will ever stay the same again. The trailer for episode 6 doesn't just hint at tension. It feels like a warning that loyalties are no longer safe, trust is no longer strong, and even family might not be enough to hold people together when the truth comes out. Because at Dutton Ranch, the biggest danger has never been the enemies outside. It has always been the cracks forming inside the walls. Something has changed at the ranch, and everyone can feel it. The air is heavier, the silence feels uncomfortable, and every conversation now carries a hidden meaning behind it. It's as if everyone is waiting for something to explode, but no one knows exactly when it will happen. At the center of it all is Rip. For a long time, Rip has been the one holding everything together. Quiet, controlled, and always thinking 3 steps ahead. He never rushes. He never reacts without reason. But in episode 6, that version of Rip starts to shift. The trailer shows a man who is no longer just observing, but questioning. And once Rip starts asking the right questions, the truth becomes dangerous for everyone involved. The discovery of Wes's body has changed everything. This is no longer about land, business, or control. It has become something far more personal. Because a body on Dutton land is not just evidence, it is a message. Someone is trying to send a signal. Someone is trying to push the ranch into chaos, and Rip knows it. What makes this even more dangerous is the way suspicion starts to spread. Nobody is fully trusted anymore. Every glance feels like a test. Every answer feels rehearsed. And every silence feels like someone hiding something important. That is the beginning of collapse. Not violence, but doubt. Because once doubt enters a place like Dutton Ranch, it spreads faster than fire. Meanwhile, the Jackson family is no longer standing as strongly as they appear on the outside. The trailer hints at cracks forming within their own structure. Not everyone in the family believes in the same direction anymore. Not everyone is comfortable with what is happening behind closed doors. And when a family starts questioning itself, outsiders don't need to attack. They only need to wait. Hayne becomes one of the most important pieces in this growing tension. He is not built like the others. He does not carry the same hardness, the same control, or the same hunger for dominance. Instead, he carries hesitation. And hesitation is dangerous in a world where everyone else is choosing sides without looking back. The trailer shows him caught in pressure from both directions. On one side, there is loyalty, the weight of family, blood, and history that tells him to stay quiet and follow. On the other side, there is truth, the growing realization that something is not right, and staying silent may cost more than speaking up. And right in the middle of that conflict, Hayne is starting to break. And when someone like him starts to break, they don't just fall apart quietly. They become unpredictable. They become the key that unlocks everything. At the same time, Beth is moving differently this season. She is not reacting with chaos like before. Instead, she is calculating, watching, learning. She is no longer just attacking problems, she is understanding them. And that makes her far more dangerous than before. Because when Beth starts thinking instead of reacting, people around her stop realizing how much control she is actually gaining. And that control is starting to worry the wrong people. Because while Rip searches for truth and Beth builds influence, others are starting to feel replaced. The ranch is still standing, but the power inside it is shifting. Slowly, quietly, almost invisibly, but definitely. And that is where episode 6 begins to feel different from everything before it. It is not about one big event. It is about multiple small changes happening at the same time. Changes that no one is stopping. Changes that no one fully understands. And changes that are slowly pulling the entire ranch toward a breaking point. Because the truth is simple. When too many things start changing at once, something is already wrong. And episode 6 is where that wrong finally starts to show its face. The most dangerous thing happening at Dutton Ranch right now is not a fight, Not a threat, and not even a hidden enemy. It is something much quieter. Something that cannot be seen clearly until it is already too late. Loyalty is starting to crack. At first, it begins in small moments. A hesitation before answering a question. A pause that lasts too long, a look that avoids eye contact. On the surface, these things mean nothing. But inside a place like Dutton Ranch, nothing is ever truly small. Every detail carries weight, and in episode 6, those small details begin to connect into something much bigger. Rip notices it first. He always does. He is not just watching people, he is reading them, and what he sees now is different from before. People are not just following orders anymore. They are thinking, questioning, wondering where their safety really lies. And once that starts, authority begins to lose its grip, because authority only works when people believe in it. The Jackson family is where this shift becomes even more dangerous. On the outside, they still look united. They still speak like a family that stands together. But inside, things are no longer stable. There are unspoken disagreements growing between members. There are decisions being made without full trust. And worst of all, there is fear that someone inside the family may not be fully loyal anymore. That fear changes everything. Hayne becomes the center of this pressure again. Not because he is the strongest, but because he is the most conflicted. He is being pulled in every direction at once, and every direction demands something different from him. Stay loyal, stay silent, stay strong, but also stay honest. Stay aware, stay human, and those two paths cannot exist together for long. The trailer makes it clear that Hayne is no longer just observing events. He is inside them now, fully involved, fully exposed, and fully vulnerable. There is a growing sense that he knows more than he is saying, or worse, that he is starting to understand things he was never meant to understand. And in this world, understanding the wrong truth can be just as dangerous as speaking it. What makes Hayne's situation even more unstable is the pressure coming from his own family. There is an unspoken expectation that he will fall in line, no matter what he feels inside. But the problem is, he is starting to see contradictions everywhere. Actions that do not match words, promises that do not feel real, and decisions that seem to protect power more than people. That kind of realization does not stay quiet for long. Meanwhile, Rip's approach is becoming sharper. He is no longer just trying to protect the ranch. He is trying to expose what is hurting it. And that means asking questions that others would prefer remain unanswered. It also means pushing people closer to their breaking points. Because truth does not always come out gently. Sometimes it has to be forced out. And when pressure increases, cracks become visible. The Jackson family is beginning to show those cracks more clearly now. Some members are becoming defensive, others are becoming distant, and a few are starting to act in ways that suggest they are thinking beyond the family structure itself. That alone is enough to create instability. Because once people stop thinking as a unit, they start acting as individuals, and individuals can be influenced, manipulated, or turned. This is where the real danger begins. Not in war, not in confrontation, but in separation. Because once a family stops standing together completely, it only takes one push for everything to fall apart. And episode 6 feels like that push is getting closer with every passing moment. Beth continues to rise within this shifting environment, but her rise is not loud, it is strategic. She is not demanding attention, she is earning it, quietly gaining trust, slowly influencing decisions, and building a position where she can see everything without needing to ask. That kind of power is invisible until it becomes too late to challenge it. And while she builds influence, others are losing control without realizing it. Roel, in particular, begins to feel this loss more intensely. He does not respond well to change, especially change he did not approve. The idea that things can continue without his full control creates tension inside him that is difficult to hide. And when control starts slipping, people like him rarely step back. They push harder. And pushing harder inside a fractured environment only speeds up collapse. That is what makes episode 6 so dangerous. It is not a single event waiting to happen. It is a collection of unstable emotions, hidden tensions, and silent decisions, all moving toward the same point. And that point is not peace, it is confrontation. At Dutton Ranch, power is no longer something stable or predictable. It is shifting from one hand to another without anyone clearly noticing the exact moment it happens. And in episode 6, that shift becomes impossible to ignore. Because now, power is not just about control over land or decisions, it is about control over people. And people are starting to change. Rip stands at the center of this changing structure, but even he is not fully in control of how fast things are moving. He is still the same in many ways, calm, focused, and deeply loyal, but something inside him has started to harden further. The patience he once had is thinning. The tolerance he once showed is fading. And the way he looks at people now is different. He is no longer just trying to understand them. He is trying to decide what they are hiding. That is a dangerous shift, because once someone starts looking at others as problems instead of people, the distance between truth and action becomes very short. At the same time, Beth's influence continues to grow, but in a way that feels almost invisible to those who are not paying attention. She is not forcing her way into power. She is stepping into spaces where power is already weakening, and every time she does, she fills the gap before anyone else can react. This is what makes her dangerous in episode 6. Not aggression, but timing. She knows when to speak, when to stay silent, and when to let others underestimate her. That combination allows her to move through the ranch like a shadow, slowly becoming part of decisions that once excluded her completely. But while Beth adapts, others struggle to keep up. Roel is one of those who cannot accept what is happening. For him, control is not just authority, it is identity. The idea that the ranch can function without him at the center creates internal resistance that turns into frustration, and frustration slowly turns into anger. And anger, once it settles, does not remain silent for long. The trailer suggests that Roel is no longer interested in cooperation. He is interested in correction. He wants things to return to the way they were, even if that means forcing it. And when someone reaches that stage, compromise becomes impossible. Because now, every action feels like a test of dominance. Every conversation becomes a challenge, and every disagreement feels personal. This is where the conflict starts to expand beyond simple disagreements and into something far more unstable. Roel is not just reacting to change, he is resisting replacement. And that resistance begins to affect how he treats everyone around him, especially those who seem to be gaining influence in his absence. That includes Rip, and Beth, and anyone who represents the new direction of the ranch. But the most important impact of this tension is not external. It is internal. Because Roel's mindset begins to influence others indirectly. People who once followed him without question start noticing his frustration. They start adjusting their behavior around him. And slowly, fear begins to spread through his side of influence. Fear is never stable in leadership. It spreads confusion, it creates hesitation, and it forces people to make decisions based on survival rather than loyalty. And survival always changes alliances. Meanwhile, Hayne remains trapped in the middle of all of this. His position becomes more complicated with every passing moment because he is now close enough to see everything, but not strong enough to control anything. He hears conversations he was not meant to hear. He notices contradictions others ignore. And he begins to connect pieces that no one has officially explained to him. But the more he understands, the more isolated he becomes. Because knowledge does not always bring clarity. Sometimes it brings burden. And Hayne is carrying too much of it. The trailer hints at his growing emotional pressure, and that pressure is beginning to show in his behavior. He is no longer as composed as he used to be. There is hesitation in his reactions, doubt in his expressions, and a constant sense that he is standing too close to something dangerous without knowing exactly what it is. And that uncertainty is exactly what makes him unpredictable now. Because people under pressure do not always break in obvious ways. Sometimes they change direction completely. And that possibility is what makes him the most important variable in episode 6. Not Rip, not Beth, not Roel, but Hayne, because he is the one person who can still go either way. And whichever direction he chooses will not just affect him, it will affect the entire structure around him. That is why episode 6 is no longer just about conflict building between characters. It is about alignment. Everyone is starting to choose sides, even without fully realizing it. And once those choices are locked in, there will be no easy way back. The ranch is no longer balancing on stability. It is balancing on decisions that have not been made yet. And those decisions are getting closer with every moment. Everything at Dutton Ranch is now moving toward one unavoidable moment. A point where silence will no longer protect anyone, a point where hesitation will no longer matter, and a point where every hidden truth will finally demand to be seen. Episode 6 is not building toward a simple confrontation. It is building toward a breaking point that could reshape everything that comes after it. And the most dangerous part is that no one fully realizes how close they are to it. Rip is now operating in a different mindset than before. He is no longer just reacting to events as they happen. He is anticipating them, watching patterns, reading behavior, and preparing for outcomes that have not yet fully revealed themselves. This shift makes him more focused, but also more isolated. Because once someone starts seeing too far ahead, they stop trusting the present moment. And trust is already disappearing at the ranch. The Jackson family is no longer functioning as a single unit. It is now a structure held together by history, not harmony. The trailer makes it clear that pressure is building from every direction. Internal disagreements are becoming harder to hide, and emotional control is becoming weaker with every new development. What used to be loyalty is now obligation, and obligation is fragile. Beth continues to rise, but now her presence is no longer subtle. People are beginning to notice her influence, even if they do not fully understand it yet. She is not challenging authority directly, she is reshaping how authority works. And that makes her one of the most powerful forces in this entire situation. Because changing a system from within is far more effective than attacking it from outside. But power always creates resistance. And that resistance is growing inside Roel. Roel is reaching a stage where he no longer sees change as evolution. He sees it as loss. Loss of control, loss of respect, loss of identity. And when someone reaches that mental space, every decision becomes reactive instead of strategic. The trailer hints that he is no longer willing to accept the new balance forming at the ranch. He wants correction, not compromise. And that mindset leads directly to conflict. Meanwhile, Hayne is standing at the exact center of everything. And the pressure on him is no longer subtle. It is constant. Every side expects something from him. Every direction pulls him in a different emotional direction. And every decision he avoids makes the next one more dangerous. He is no longer just observing the collapse of stability, he is part of it. And that realization changes everything about him. Because once someone understands they are inside the storm, not outside of it, their behavior changes permanently. The trailer strongly suggests that episode 6 will push Hayne into a moment where he cannot remain neutral anymore, a situation where silence becomes impossible, and where every option carries consequences he cannot fully predict. That is where true transformation begins, not in strength, but in pressure. Because pressure reveals who someone really is. And Hayne is now under more pressure than ever before. The most powerful idea emerging from episode 6 is not war between families or conflict between leaders. It is collapse from within. The idea that a system does not need an outside enemy to fall apart. It only needs enough internal friction, enough emotional instability, and enough unresolved tension. And Dutton Ranch now has all three. Rip searching for truth is increasing pressure. Beth gaining influence is shifting balance. Role resisting change is creating friction, and Hayne standing in the middle is amplifying instability. When all of these forces combine, collapse is no longer a possibility, it becomes a timeline. And episode 6 feels like the moment where that timeline becomes visible for the first time. Because once everything starts aligning toward conflict, there is no longer a way to stop it quietly. Something will give. Someone will break. And when it happens, it will not just affect one character or one family. It will reshape the entire future of the ranch. And that is why episode 6 does not feel like just another episode. It feels like the moment everything begins to fall apart. And just like that, episode 6 leaves us standing at the edge of something much bigger than anyone inside Dutton Ranch seems ready for. Because this is no longer just about secrets being uncovered or tensions slowly rising. This is about a structure that is starting to lose its balance from every direction at once. Rip is no longer simply protecting the ranch, he is actively trying to understand who is weakening it from the inside. And the deeper he digs, the more dangerous the answers become. Beth is no longer working in the background either. She is quietly shaping influence in ways that will be very hard to undo. And Roel, blinded by control and frustration, is moving closer to decisions that could push everything past the point of no return. But the most important piece in all of this is still Hayne. Because while everyone else is choosing sides, building power, or preparing for conflict, he is the one standing in the middle of it all, watching, listening, and slowly realizing that staying silent might be the most